welcome to our new Timoney Leaders series. I'm delighted to be joined by Joe Osborne, Managing Director of Godolphin Ireland, which is part of the world-renowned breeding and horse racing operation. Joe has an impressive career working in the sector across the globe, starting out in Kentucky, and he's served in various capacities on industry bodies such as chairing the Irish Thoroughbred Breeders Association and as Director of the Irish Farriers Authority and a trustee of RACE, Racing Academy and Centre of Education. 4 years ago, Joe and I had the pleasure of spending a very enjoyable weekend in Barcelona with a group of coaches and business leaders who travelled out to spend some time at Barcelona Football Club and Academy and the IESE Business School and BRAFA Sports Club, with an eye to learning about values-based leadership and how to coach better, how to lead better, how to be better. And Joe surprised us afterwards by sharing his reflections written up on the plane on the way home. They were very well crafted, thought-provoking, and they arrived in our inbox the following morning. What I didn't realize was at the time was that this was one of many that Joe has written, other experiences that he's reflected on, and it's great to see them attractively captured in a new book which Joe has just published, Poise and Stride, which I have here behind me. And it's a series of articles and short stories written over Joe's extensive career and illustrated by Declan Considine. So I'm really looking forward to our chat today, Joe, and to dipping our toes into the water here with the book. There's a lot of wisdom contained within the covers. But maybe before we delve in, perhaps you could give us a bit of background on how this book came about, Joe.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity to be here with you and your guests this evening. I suppose I've always enjoyed writing. I've always enjoyed the written word. This is a collection of 41 short essays, I suppose, that I've written over the last 10 plus years. A lot of them would have been for an audience. We've got a management training program here within Godolphin called Godolphin Flying Start, and we do a quarterly newsletter for them, for the graduates. And it started off probably titled as a blog, but just, I suppose, it's insights from different things I'd experienced along the way. And yeah, just about a little over a year ago, I just had this idea that I'd like to just compile them into a book format. And it was a 12-month process from that sort of light bulb moment to getting it off from the printers a few weeks ago. Great journey. It's something that probably, to use the phrase, is one of those itches I'd always wanted to scratch, and it's a great sense of satisfaction to have it now sort of there in print form.
Very good, very good. Well, it's very well written. Where did you learn to write so well and capture things so succinctly, which is no easy task?
I don't know. I mean, I went to secondary school in St. Joseph's Academy, as it was then in Kildare Town, and that's probably developed my love for the English language back then. I'd like to say it doesn't come easy. I mean, just I think everybody knows, probably writing short pieces is probably a lot harder than writing long ones. With these ones, I just had that, for some reason, just came up with the number 500 in my head as a sort of the discipline I try and write to within that. So these pieces are typically, give or take a few words, north or south of 500 words. So just to try and come up, an idea and condense it into that sort of number. Some of them, I suppose I've got, there's a sort of a range of topics there, and probably that range of topics is a function of probably the great opportunities I've had. I've had a blessed career in terms of the opportunities to travel and to meet interesting people in interesting places. But I suppose one of the things probably to point out is very few of these subject matters are horse related. Like probably there's a horse, there's Declan Considine, who's a local illustrator, does a great job illustrating it. There is a horse drawing on the cover of it, but generally these come from a fairly wide range of subject areas.
Yes, and that's one of the features of it, is just how diverse the range of articles are in it, and the different themes that you draw into. Maybe we can dive into some of them here. Just before we do, to say there's a Q&A function on your screens, which if you would like to pop in any questions or comments for Joe, please do put them there, and we'll get to them. But maybe, Joe, if we dive into a few of the articles, we can't cover them all. They're over 40, but just to unpack and give our listeners a taste of it. So the first one I have here is "Free Radical," is the title of it, and it's a reflection on Harry Belafonte, the Afro-Caribbean musician, who it seems had a lot more to him besides his music. And can you tell us a bit about Harry and what insights you're drawing from him?
Yeah, well, I suppose probably the greatest insight is the courage the man had. You know, he's been an activist and an agitator throughout his career. You know, I draw the sort of the point at the start. You know, his musical style is about as middle of the road as you can get, but he's a man who just grasped the pretty stingy nettle of a lot of different social issues through a very turbulent time in American history, and tackled them head on, took some pretty brave stands. And, you know, but so one of the points I made there is that, you know, it's quite easy to jump on the wagon of protest when things are up to full speed. But in Harry Belafonte's case, it just struck me that he had that courage to be the first voice in a lot of those sort of issues, which is something that I think is admirable. So that was the point there, just the importance of that, just having that courage to, I suppose, to swim against the tide. And I think I make the point, not just to be the loudest voice of protest, but to be the first one takes even more courage again.
Yes, and to step in. And it struck me just reading it and listening to some other leaders talk about this as well, that, you know, we're here in Ireland at the moment, across the globe, we're living in times where it does take a lot of courage to stand up and kind of question the establishment or the accepted view that might be handed down through a media, and to have a debate about big questions in the way we run society or the values we should champion. You can get easily vilified or even lose business over it. So be interested in your view is how we could encourage courage among leaders, you know, drawing on Harry's the sparks that he sort of inflamed.
Well, I suppose unfortunately the way the world has become just so polarized, you know. So you've got, you know, those people could say, yeah, the voices they're louder than probably ever were, but they're very loud on the extremes. And you know, I suppose at the time, I suppose to talk, you know, American politics, which is probably you know, something that's quite sort of current at the moment. You know, at the time of Donald Trump's election 4 years ago, you thought, well, you know, it just seemed just so extreme, so polarized, that you think, well, maybe what this will do is activate the silent majority that are in the middle, that just haven't really sort of had their voice. And I suppose it was starting to look for a while there that wasn't, you know, on both sides of the political spectrum, it was just getting further and further apart, so negative and so charged that they're almost meeting, come full circle, where you've got sort of in America, you've got the gun-toting extremists on both sides of the political fence almost facing each other, and you say, well, I can't actually differentiate these. So like, maybe the message is, you know, maybe sometimes it takes courage to be the voice of reason that's actually in the middle, that's not taking an extreme view on things, you know.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, and I suppose the point there too of how I think you mentioned it. You know, we all have sparks that we see, things that we're not happy about, and we might just shout about it to the mirror rather than.
And that's it. You say this. You know, it's recognizing it is just one step on a journey. You got to recognize recognize that spark, but then actually act on it as well. You know, and that step does take. It takes courage, and it takes energy as well.
Yes, indeed. Well, just if we move on to Culture Club, which was another one here where you explore the topic of high performance, an aspiration which I know many leaders want for themselves and for their teams. You based this one around Bill Walsh and the
but you can see probably there's a fairly, I wouldn't say it's a recurring theme, but a fairly common theme through a lot of these. There's quite a strong American influence. I've spent 12 years of my life and my career in America, and I probably feel even this stage I'm probably still part of that country. So yeah, that particular piece is about the San Francisco 49ers, NFL, American football team, and Coach Bill Walsh and what he went in there. And it's not, it's about high performance, but it's also about the importance of value-based leadership and the importance of integrity and the importance of doing things right when people aren't looking. You know, that sense of excellence. You know, I think there's a tendency in sport, probably a tendency in business to look at the score sheet and to use that as your reference point in terms of how you're performing, and probably with, I suppose, with share prices and, you know, and in sport, you know, just how it's all so immediate now. We want to know, are we winning or losing? And just people lose sight of that sort of that longer term thing. That's the importance of it needs to be based on something that's got greater integrity than just what's up on the scoreboard at that point in time. And, you know, in his particular case, he came into a club that was performing poorly, dysfunctional at a cultural level as well as a performance level. And he went in there, and, you know, he's from the ground up. It was a case of changing the culture, and then by changing that culture, that got converted into winning on the field. But it was people who lived their lives with that sense of values, and you know, so that's, you know, it's something I know Timoney stands for as well, is that values-based leadership and how important that is. If it's not built on that sort of foundation, the whole thing is just, it's a house of cards that can collapse so easily.
Yeah, and as you say, focusing on character and integrity as something to measure rather than the external results or measures that people expect. You mentioned in that area about, I thought it was quite an interesting question where that we often don't ask about, what does losing look like? And, you know, that very often that's where we're coming from. We're trying to improve, we're trying to get beyond mediocrity, and we've still some way to go to get to the high performance. But can you explain what you meant by that? And
yeah, I think that, yeah, that you've got winning and losing. Yeah, it's not about just what again the scoreboard. You know, is losing getting beaten in the sort of the final kick of the game or the final whatever, you know, beaten in a photo finish in a horse race. Or is losing when the whole structures are falling apart. You know, that's I think that, you know, that high performance isn't just the performance on the day. It's something that just runs right through the culture of an organization, whether that's a business or whether it's a professional club or an individual.
Yeah, very good, very good. And you talked about a zone, that it's not a target, but it's a zone.
Yeah, and I remember when having been a graduate of the Timoney program, and one of the speakers we had in who talked about that, what they call the gap in performance between high performance, and I think one of the analogies to use was an orchestra, and that, you know, the gap between what's high performance and unacceptable performance is so narrow in that sort of level. You know, so that there's a zone there that just everybody needs to be brought along. So we all need to be operating within this. And particularly in team-based organizations and clubs, one person is not going to be able to carry it. It needs to be something that everybody buys into, and that probably comes from a set of values, probably.
Mm-hmm. And it's. I know you mentioned in Bill Walsh's case as well that it was sort of sustaining a winning culture was part of the feature there, you know.
Yeah, it was sustaining it, but not just was sustaining it, but also part of his legacy was that it took him several years to get there. Like he didn't go in there and just flick a switch and say, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. Like, you know, after his first year, the performance on the field of play was no better than it was the previous one. And it just, so it takes, these things take time, and it takes a serious commitment to stay at that level, you know. So and that's what he was able to do. He was able to build something that was sustainable, but it certainly wasn't by no means an overnight success story.
Yeah, like quite a lot of patience and perseverance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You have a great line in there about champions behave like champions before they are champions when no one is watching. What do you mean by that one?
Yeah, that's it. I think, you know, probably nowadays, with even more so, probably in the world of social media, that, you know, people almost, it's just that sense of how they're perceived is so important to them. But it's you know, I always think that, you know, integrity isn't what you do when you're being watched; it's what you do when you're not being watched. I think that, you know, that was the point of he had everybody in that organization, that it wasn't just how they were seen by their fans on the day of a big game. It was, they lived their lives to a code of conduct that permeated through everything that they did.
Yeah, yeah, no, very good, and it does that really does chime quite well with our motto here in Timoney as well, with better leaders and better organizations, better society. It's very much where we want to take it. Have you any thoughts on coaching for leaders? I mean, he was obviously a very good coach, and it does apply, like in business, there's a growing trend really of having a coach as a leader.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of it. I just haven't gone through it myself in fairly recent times, and just, it's one of those situations where we embraced it as a company here in Ireland, where our senior managers were all offered the opportunity to coach, and I think it's a credit that they all took it, and it was transformative. And just luckily for us, it came at a time when we really needed it to navigate through certain things. That it was just probably a good fortune that it happened when it did, because we couldn't have predicted the sort of things we were going to be dealing with. But everybody, I think it helped us all individually and collectively as well. So yeah, so I'm a big believer in it.
Yeah, it's invaluable. Great. Well, just to remind people,
I was just going to say that I'm looking at the screen here. I don't see any questions coming in. It does remind me, having done the Timoney program, that I know there are certain people who signed up to that who didn't read the case studies until 10 minutes beforehand. So if people don't start sending questions in, I've got some people I'm going to start asking questions to on camera.
We've got one straight in from that. Given social distancing, from Paul McKinney in the Blood Transfusion Board, given social distancing rules now, how is Joe going to do book signings? And where is the book available, and when? So
this is straight into commercial mode here now.
No, there's no let up here.
The team, all proceeds from the sale of the book are going to RACE, which is, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a trustee of, and I couldn't be going to a better cause. It's an organization that's very close to my heart. It's been something that's part of our family history as well. My father was one of the founders of it.
What is it?
What is RACE?
Yeah.
It's the Racing Academy and Centre of Education based in Kildare Town. They've been established in the early 1973, originally set up as a school to train young aspiring jockeys, but now is a much wider remit, and they do a lot of training for the thoroughbred industry generally, and not just for the global reach as well. They do training for international people as well, so they do a super job there. So RACE are coordinating sales of the book. If anybody wants to sign one, I'm more than happy to do that. You can get it via Poise and Stride at racingacademy.ie. It can, Woodbine Books in Kilcullen are selling it online. By Friday of this week, Kenny's in Galway will have it on their online offering as well. So there's plenty of ways to get it.
Plenty of ways. Okay. And John Kerry has followed up with a very good question. Is this a standalone book or the first in a series, Joe?
Yeah, that is a very good question, John. I'd expect a question of that caliber from you. It's, you'd say, as I said earlier, use the phrase that it scratched an itch, but it's certainly given me a feeling. Yeah, I'd like to probably maybe go in a different direction. I've written, there's other pieces that weren't included in here that maybe just as well they weren't, some of them. But I've got, I think we'll go again now for sure. Maybe go down a different sort of path. But it's been a positive experience. So there's nothing that happened on this journey that sort of would say no, I'll never do that again.
Excellent. Okay, well, we'll jump into maybe another article then. Value and Values, which I alluded to at the start there. This trip to Barcelona, leadership trip.
Yeah. So we
did you? By the way, when we arrived there, we were checking into the hotel. We were going to visit Barcelona Football Academy, and Messi turned up at the hotel as we were going to check in.
Yeah.
You got your selfie with him, did you?
No, I didn't get my selfie. That trip was wasted on me at the time, as were subsequent trips to Munich and to Madrid. I mean, I've no interest in soccer whatsoever, but I do love that whole sport arena, particularly at the high performance level in terms of trying to learn from that. So unfortunately, Messi could walk right up to me now, and I wouldn't even know who he was, unfortunately. But no, so I didn't get a selfie with him. But
Yes.
that was, what it was so rewarding about those trips were that sense of combining sporting excellence with something that's community based. So you're getting to see a full spectrum. So this wasn't a soccer jolly, if you know what I mean. It was, I think you're going there, I think, with like-minded people from a wide range of backgrounds. So you're chatting along the way, learning from them. But then, so we went to a place called the Brafa Academy, and saw the work that they're doing there with some of the more marginalized members of society, so it's just fascinating.
This was a sports club for children located on the other side of Barcelona to the Barcelona Football Club.
Yeah.
We went one day to see the academy and the excellence and what they were trying to do there to produce their team, and then went to see how they were doing it at a different level.
Yeah, but also
we had a very interesting kind of contrast between the two of them in your article.
Well, contrast in a few ways, because one is that we go at all of the soccer clubs we went to. We go to the academies. I'm probably coming from my sector of the horse business, where you've got this pyramid of horses that are born every year, and the tip of that pyramid is so narrow in terms of finding the true champions. And these academies work the same way. I mean, it's so you can turn the pyramid upside down, and it's like a funnel. And whether it's Munich, Barcelona, Madrid, I'm sure Manchester United, you name it, these academies, they take in hundreds, possibly even thousands of young kids who want to be the next Messi. And it's a brutal world for them. They're I don't know how you even measure success with them, but I mean, it's really is a case of filter, and you end up with just a handful of people that have proper careers in that sport. Whereas you go to the more community-based things where we did it at these different cities, you think it's the exact opposite approach. It's a safety net. They're there, they want to capture as wide a safety net to catch people who are marginalized, people who are in difficulty, and trying to bring them along and just give them not just chances, second chances, third chances. I think so. Just between their sending in Munich as well, it's that sense of forgiveness, of empathy, of the young people saying we're here, and with the, I suppose one of the lessons for Barcelona was that sense that you're planting seeds here with young kids, and who knows when they're going to come to fruition. This isn't a case of back to the Bill Walsh analogy, where we're going to do something. We're not going to flick a light switch in this kid's troubled life. We're going to give some guidance here that who knows, it just could be like a seed that's there that 10, 20 years later, it can just bear fruit. And just admirable work under difficult circumstances, poorly funded, but they just do. So I think probably you come out thinking these guys, these are the heroes of the world, not the Messis who get paid gazillions for a few minutes running around the pitch. It's people who are just there trying to just mentor and guide and just do their little bit, and for no real thanks from anybody.
Yes, and it kind of, I think you made the point there as well that or it came out that what our organizations are, the organizations that we lead, and that it's not just about making money or achieving a result, but it really does. They're mediums for people to flourish and to make a living.
And I think just that particular story that I wrote about that trip was that the final point was the team that we're all part of is society, and just the people who are doing that great work, they've got that sense of we're part of something bigger here. It's not self-centered, it's not selfish, it's not even just the core sort of club or whatever. This is we're doing something for a broader base than just our those close to us, you know what I mean?
Yeah, pulling people up who need pulling up, and help and encouragement and passing on, which was great.
Yeah. And
there's a question here actually that kind of is I think relevant here. Any insights about how managers can sell value-based leadership upwards to their own managers? So obviously, where leaders who perhaps need this, I can throw in my own little tip there, obviously, but what do you think, Joe?
How do you sell it up the food chain?
Yeah.
Good. That's a good question for sure. Well, certainly, you've got to. You can't sell it unless you're living it yourself. I mean, that's probably the first point I'd make. You can't, whether you're preaching up the food chain, down the food chain, to your colleagues. you've got to be living it in your own life first before you can try and sort of get people to aspire to different. I think probably one of the best ways I would find, whether it's at a coaching level, whether it's at a mentoring level within the work environment, to use specifics. You know, all this sort of you know, including probably even, you know, not being self-deprecating, well, but these kind of books that are sort of on the sort of the self-help section I'd say they're probably the easiest things in the world to write, because all the stuff is so blindingly obvious. You just basically, this is it, but living it is incredibly challenging. You know, like it's just that point of just because it's simple doesn't make it easy.
Yeah.
But the best way to get anybody convinced of anything is to use specific examples. And, you know, so you know, there's a situation where in a work environment, for example, rather than going in and sort of just talking general sort of philosophy about the importance of high standards and values, if you say, here's a specific example, here's something that you did, here's something that you said, here's what the implications are, here's how it made me feel, and so you're talking, you know, zone it into specifics, I think, are probably the best learnings for everybody.
Yeah, very good, very practical point. Yeah, great. There are two questions here from Margaret Quigley and Paul Stapleton, both on the same. How did you come up with the title, and how does it relate to leadership?
The title of the book?
Yes.
Poise and Stride. It's a quote from the Patrick Kavanagh, who was. It seemed like, I think he might be dropped off the Leaving Cert syllabus now. Because I've asked a few of my kids' colleagues to say. So when we were back, I did the Leaving Cert in 1980. You know, he was just somebody who just tapped into that sort of that rural ethos and philosophy of Irish life, but also somebody who probably did a lot of his writings based in Dublin around the Ballsbridge area. That he just tapped into something. So I actually had a couple of different names on the book, but this one just, you know, so it's from the poem Stony Grey Soil, and, you know, there's a little bit of irony in there, you know, that he thought his stumble had the poise and stride of Apollo, and his voice, his thick tongue mumble as he mumbled. So that was, yeah. So it's sort of a nod to Patrick Kavanagh is really where the title came from.
Very good, and an apt one at that. Well, maybe we'll go on to the fourth article we're going to talk about here, titled Automotive, which was a follow-on trip from the one to Barcelona.
Yeah.
Again, in pursuit of values-based leadership.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And, you know, I suppose it was another fascinating trip. And, you know, I again, to reiterate that point, you know, you learn as much from your colleagues that are on those trips. You know, I think just, you know, back to the point about leadership and how we grow and develop ourselves, you know, really the reality is a lot of people on a trip like that, or who do your leadership programs, are people who are probably close to the top of their respective organizations. And as everybody listening in probably is fully aware, that can be quite a lonely place at times. So there's something really encouraging to talk to people, and that sort of to share experiences and that. And so yes, a
community of leaders almost.
Yeah, exactly, and leaders that come from different spheres too. You know, then you just realize actually, you know, the core themes are common to us all, and that was, you know, a lot of parallels between the Munich trip and the Barcelona one, but, you know, there it was what was called the Work and Box Company, which again was is an initiative, probably even more so than the case in Barcelona. These were not just kids who are on the margins of society. These are kids who have actually fallen. This is the last resort for them, the last before prison, really. You know, so the authorities say they've dropped out of school, they fall into a life of probably petty crime. This is their lives are only going a certain way, and this is a company that was set up to give them one last chance. And they work there, but they also learn how to box, and that by learning that they learn self-discipline. But so you think, well, okay, that I can, you see the logic to all that. But then what probably was the most probably inspiring part of it all is the sense of forgiveness that they have. So no matter what those kids do within that environment, if they misbehave, they're sent home, but every single one of them is welcome back there the next day with a clean slate.
Begin again.
Begin again, and just we never, you know, that's so those kids. You're thinking, you know, this here is somebody that just never loses faith in me, and it's just something so inspiring about that. I thought, so it was just fascinating to see how it was done, and the work that they're doing, again, just on shoestring budgets, and you just
So it was a big contrast between, it was kind of a very small, pokey facility they had with the boxing ring in the basement, and compared to Bayern Munich Football Club on the other, which is the other place we visited, meeting with Matthias Sammer.
Yeah,
quite a contrast, but
yeah, exactly. And again, you're there with Bayern Munich, there, just all those kids that sort of go there, try to become the next superstar player, and then here, just across the city, just again, it was just great. And so just try and just capture that in 500 words and give my insight on it.
In fairness, you also highlighted in Bayern Munich the focus that they had on character, not just technical skills, which I thought was quite an important point too. I mean, it resonates throughout the book generally, the emphasis you put on developing character and integrity, and you spotted that.
Yeah,
absolutely. As well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Incidentally, we were joined, when you talk about community of leaders there, we were joined on that trip by our current manager of the Irish team, Stephen Kenny. He was, you might recall, he was on that trip too, which was great when he was manager of Dundalk.
Absolutely. And, and just, I'm not talking out of school, but I mean, when in that group environment, as he stood up and spoke with such a level of honesty that I just got, gosh, I was so pleased to see him getting that appointment that did. I mean, you talk about, character and integrity, that's based on honesty, and that's his, I was just so impressed with him, and as a person on that trip, I said, delighted to say, this is the kind of person we need now, bring us onto the field. So I think he'll do great things.
Excellent, great. Well, another point you highlighted there, just again, going back to the box and work company, was about their optimism.
Yeah.
Which was quite striking. Can you talk a bit about that? And
yeah, that optimism is based on that they see good in everybody. That that sense, we forgive you whatever you've done, not just because forgiving you is the thing to do, but because we do believe that every single person has a future in the world, and that just permeated through everything that they did. So it was just inspiring to see it.
Yes, excellent. Well, just I see Susanna Cawley has added a comment there about the distribution of the book is being very efficient. She received it very quickly and suspects your attention to detail and impressive leadership skills were at play here. So I can echo that. Yes, indeed.
Well, I probably an appropriate point is to jump in and give a shout out to Declan Considine, who you mentioned did the illustrations. When I had the idea for the book, it was October of last year, and I just wanted to get it illustrated. I just had that sort of vision in my mind. That's what I wanted it to look like. And there was a website called Illustrators Ireland, and they literally had hundreds and hundreds of illustrators, and they've got a portfolio of all of their work. And I just was going scroll and scroll and scroll, and then it was like, bingo! This is who I want. Emailed them out of the blue. I said, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Is this the kind of thing you're interested in? And he said, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to do it. And I said, where are you based? He said, Sallins, County Kildare. So literally, he was a few miles up the road.
Amazing.
He just got the core of each story so well, and he had expertise in book production too. So he's been a great ally to me, and just delighted to have somebody like him on as part of it.
Yeah. Great. Well, there's a last question here I'll pull out, which goes back to a point we were talking about earlier. What benefit do you feel you're getting from coaching personally?
Personally, well, I as it worked out at the time, it got me through, navigating something, a pretty sort of rocky patch in my sort of career that I navigated that I thought quite well, but that was thanks to the coaching that I had. I think it helps. It put perspective on things for me, which I think was helpful as well. But also was quite strategic. We had a panel of coaches to choose from, and I think the one that I picked was it just was a good fit for what I needed, as somebody who was able to be quite specific in terms of this is exactly what you need to do, and and it was action and outcome based as well. It wasn't just sort of talking about the airy fairy philosophy of stuff. It was, and also very good. I think again, just the example, bringing a specific scenario. Here's a situation, and then just being able to talk through how to navigate that in real time. I think, we said we learn from experiences. Absolutely, we do. But if you can actually have the benefit of coaching while you're actually doing something in real time and think it through with that guidance, I think it just makes you so much a better leader.
Yeah, very good. And even just, I was thinking some of the insights when I was reading some of your articles, like literally you don't want to keep going because there's so much in one article just to stop and reflect. And it certainly struck me that if one is getting coaching, that even picking out, if you want to know, well, what will I talk about? You could pick any one of those articles as a starting point and say, discuss the theme in it.
Yeah, and interestingly, I was somebody else who was giving me some help at the start said, what does success look like at the end of this project? And what I said was, like, if 100 people get this book and there's 41 stories in the book, if just one of those gets something that says, gosh, that resonated with me, just that, the sense of satisfaction, and that has come back in spades. But also, interestingly, what has come back and has really struck me is how I've probably got 41 different people have come back, and each, just the different stories resonate with different people, which is fascinating, and probably a great sense of satisfaction as well. That it's not a case of people dip in and dip out of this, and some just strike a chord with people, but there seems to it's a wide range, and thankfully, people do seem to say, oh gosh, that did strike me,
Yeah. Oh, well done. It's quite an achievement to do it. And as we said earlier, you can get your hands on a copy from Race. We will be sending around to all the people who are on the webinar. We'll send the email address in case you want to follow it up or indeed pass it on to others.
Yeah, we have a social media presence. There's a Twitter and an Instagram account as well, so you can log on. Hopefully, get some more followers after today, and we can see if I can get a bit of insight from it too. So
excellent. Well, thank you for sharing those stories with us. And I know we've only had a chance to look at a few out of the 41. So, but there's great depth there and richness to reflect on for leadership values and character, and things that are truly important rather than the passing matters. This is so we'll bring it to a close there. It's the first of our new Timoney Leaders series, and we look forward to sharing others with you. And the webinar will be available afterwards on both as a YouTube video and a podcast format. So you can share it, or if you want to listen to it again, you'll be able to do that. Just a little shout out to ask for, if you are watching it on YouTube or on the podcast, to like or subscribe to them. And that will help extend our reach for our leadership insights as well. So thank you again, Joe, and thanks to Claire and Alison in the background who have been making it possible to run this as well. And take care to all our listeners.